Hi, everybody, and welcome again to another episode of the Total Recall podcast. This is an episode I'm very much looking forward to. It's a topic which I think is emotive. It's a topic I think that a lot of people are a little bit afraid to talk about. So it's one that we're going to dive deep into, and I'm pleased to be joined by Roman Frolov. So it's great to meet you, Roman.
Thank you for having me, Will. I am excited to join this conversation and share some insights into what it's like to be a founder.
Yeah, well, what attracted me to, well, why you and I got talking in the first place is because you're quite present on social media. You do quite a lot of blogging, a lot of writing about your journey, about your story. And there was one in particular that caught my eye, which we'll come to a little bit later in this conversation. But I think just for now, just if you could just talk us through your story, who's Roman, who's the person behind the CEO, behind the story we're about to tell.
I was born in 1995 to a middle class family, and I would say I had a very happy childhood. Like full family, everything was going well, and then I spent my summer days with my grandparents, so I was very close with them. Um, I remember vividly how my grandma was teaching me the the basic arithmetics when I was in junior school, and
Okay.
then we were reading Hamlet together, laying on the bed and like taking different roles. Um, and then a bit later, closer to when I was around 10 years old, my family broke up. My dad left, my mom, and then my grandma basically developed cancer and virtually disappeared from my life. Like, of course, I visited her in the hospital, but like, she didn't feel comfortable, spending much time together in that state. And together with my grandma, of course, like my grandfather, he had to quit his job and take care of grandma. So basically, they disappeared from my life. My dad, like, distanced himself away. And my grades at school basically went downhill immediately.
Mm,
I
yeah.
stopped paying attention to school after the third grade, and I got really obsessed with video games, sci-fi, and everything but school. And when I was 14 years old, my mom opened an ice cream shop, and I just happened to be there one day, and she needed help, so I helped her, and she recognized that, hey, maybe you can do that a bit more often, and so I started going there after school and helping my mom, and that became my first job. Um, but then just a couple of years later, unfortunately, the business was shut down because it wasn't the so it wasn't generating enough revenue to keep it running,
Mm,
and the investment to keep it going was too high. My mom couldn't afford that, so yeah, it went bankrupt. And yeah, then but that basically started my um, career in hospitality. After that, I worked in different places like hotels, restaurants, bars, and that lasted until I was 21. Um, there were like breaks in between here and there. I also started my online store when I was 18 because
mm.
I basically was fired from my job at the bar. And
Okay.
I didn't want to go back to working for someone, so I started an online store where I was shipping goods from abroad and selling them via social media. It was
Hmm.
like, kind of early days of social media, so
Yeah. Nice.
um,
Okay. Hustling.
was going okay. But I realized that I did some basic math and realized that I cannot grow this business to a point where it's profitable, like, or generates enough profit because, it's like you have to have a lot of money in because the margin is not that high.
Yeah.
So I switched to a like social media page that creates content instead, focused on fitness, and I got it developed to 150,000 followers and was producing some income for me so that I could just only do that and just like not have to work
Mm,
somewhere. But that didn't last long. It was like maybe 1.5, 2 years. And then social media basically started to decline and messengers became a thing, and people quickly migrated there,
Mm.
especially the young generation. And as I recognized that, I started trying different things. I tried like YouTube, I tried Twitch, I wanted to become a professional esports player. Was really addicted to Dota 2 MOBA game. I spent like around 2 or 3 thousand hours in it.
Wow. Jeez.
In a span of 1.5 years. So it's like if you calculate, that's a lot of hours per day.
Yeah. Oh God, for sure. Yeah. The last time I played a computer game was a Mega Drive. If you've ever heard of one of those.
No.
Yeah. You're showing. I'm showing my age now. Actually. Yeah. That's where Sonic was born. Sonic the Hedgehog.
Okay.
Yeah. Some time ago.
Uh,
Anyway, we digress.
yeah. So yeah, but eventually I returned back to restaurants, working as a waiter, and then worked there for a few years, became an administrator at a restaurant, and then um, well, I went on vacation in September 2016, and the vacation was going fine, but on one day I get bored and I just decided to stay at the hotel. And I was just like, I remember I was like sitting just outside the hotel in the yard, scrolling news on one evening. And then I stumbled upon a presentation about Mars colonization. I was like, what the hell? It's like, this is crazy. And I decided to watch it. And
Hmm.
so I went back to my hotel room and I watched the whole thing. And yeah, it was mesmerizing, and it basically completely shattered my like worldview. Like I had this like worldview that formed over the time as I, studied, and I wasn't good at school. Like I barely
Mm.
finished school because of how bad my math was.
Hmm.
So for me, the path of computer science was basically crossed, and it's like I grew up with the mindset that like you have to be good in math to
Mm.
become an engineer. So I thought that like, yeah, that's not a path for me.
Yeah.
But I always wanted to be an entrepreneur because I basically, maybe partly because of my parents, and partly because I grew up watching movies about Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, and Mark Zuckerberg, as I believe many did.
Yeah.
Um, and so after this presentation, I did a bit of research. I found out that the presenter was Elon Musk, and I read a bit of his biography on Wikipedia and learned that he wrote his first video game when he was like 13, and I was 21 by that time and never tried coding in my life. And I was like, wait a minute, like if he did it at 13, then at 21, I must do at least like, something. So I was like, why not give it a try? And um, I went to YouTube, I searched how to learn programming, and
Hmm.
I just randomly stumbled upon CS50, which is computer science course by Harvard.
Yeah.
Um, led by Professor J. Mallon. And this course was essentially an introduction to computer science for me. I did it like I completed it in 4 months. It went through all of the topics from like how to think as a computer scientist,
Yeah. Yeah.
algorithms, data structures, then programming with C and then web stack, so that by the end of the course, I was able to build my own project. And as a
Hmm.
final project, I built an app for booking tables in restaurants, like for
Nice. Huh?
reservations.
Okay.
And I
Yeah.
tried already selling the idea.
Playing to your strengths, the retail, the hospitality industry.
Basically utilizing existing networks and connections.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's the way to do it.
Um, yeah, that didn't go extremely well. And I tried finding a job, and that didn't go well either. I was able to get only one test task out of all the applications that I submitted, and I failed it. And then I was like, okay, maybe just one course is not enough to get a
Mm.
job. So I decided to continue learning, and I still had this insecurity about my math skills. So I started relearning math,
Mm.
relearning physics, just because I was like, I don't want to do just computer science. I want to do maybe like mechanical engineering with computer science, like
Yeah.
maybe 3D something. So I started to learn full stack, plus did some adjacent courses, not specifically on computer science, but like project management, entrepreneurial
Yeah.
opportunities. Um, then later on also did like data science with Python. And at the end, I landed pretty randomly on an Olympiad with two tracks that I favored. one was machine learning and the second one was blockchain. And that was 2017 when blockchain was kind of like just getting started. It wasn't it wasn't filled with like that many scams, or at least people didn't know about them. Um, and so for me, it was really exciting. People were talking about it. Like my dad was, he once called me like, "Hey, do you know about Ether?" Like, and we talked about it for
Yeah.
an hour. Um, and so I decided to go with the blockchain. It was something that I can at least, fathom. Whereas machine learning, like it feels like you need a bit more prerequisites to get started. And so I enrolled into the Olympiad. I did complete the first stage, which was purely science. Second stage, which already involved some programming on Ethereum blockchain. So I dug deep into the source code of Ethereum nodes and um, the different libraries that are used for calculating these elliptic curve things, like because I needed to understand how mining works.
Mm.
Um, and so I was invited into the finals that took place only like 5 months later. So that was end of 2017, and the finals would be in April 2018. So I had this gap, and I was like, okay, what do I do now? Um, so on the New Year's of like between 2017 and 2018, I basically did what I always have done had done. I worked at a restaurant. It was I think my fifth or sixth year just working
You
through
got to
the
do what you
years.
got to do, man.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
it's just like you get like a double pay, so sounds like a good deal.
Yeah.
And this time it was different because I was not at the same restaurant where I used to work because basically few months before that I quit my job at the restaurant because I was like, okay, I need to double down on studies. I'm like, there's no way back. But still for the New Year's, like decided to still work to get at least a bit of cash. And I was assigned to be like kind of like a support for other waiters, even though I had like quite a bit of experience and I could handle things myself. And I mean, it didn't start that bad, but what essentially happened is I wasn't assigned a particular like zone that I should cater, and I was basically like just carrying plates for other waiters, and other waiters were kind of not very nice. And
Mm.
at some point, it really got to me, and I was like, yeah, okay, I'm done. Like, you don't really need me. Like, I'm just wasting my time here.
Mhm.
And I basically like quit immediately there, which is not a thing I would recommend doing, especially when your mom works at the same restaurant.
Oh wow.
Uh,
Yeah. Okay.
and
So they saw a bit of nepotism there maybe and wanted to make it hard for you.
could be. But
Mm.
yeah, there was an emotional moment. Let's say it like that. It's like
Yeah.
yeah, not something you want to do to your mom.
I
Not
think
something that
those are things that you learn a lot from though. When you have to make hard decisions and you know that it's going to, cause ripples in certain other zones of relationships. I think you learn quite a lot from those and they get easier every time that you have to make such a decision. And I mean, everything that you've explained, I think sets you up really well to navigate the challenges that starting your own company up and running your own company presents. You've got a very mixed kind of like journey, I suppose, from industry to relationship, a lot of obstacles to overcome. Um, so when did you make your first jump into starting your own tech company up?
um so essentially just continuing the story, it's very close to that point in time. So there was an emotional moment, and what it inspired me to do is I went back home, and for the next month I spent every single day on Stack Exchange, like 4+ hours every single day answering
Mm,
questions. But just to emphasize, I had no experience in the industry, so I was
mm,
just like a complete newbie, searching interesting questions on Stack Exchange, doing my research, answering those questions,
hmm.
and thus learning. So I
Yeah.
did a lot of pet projects, a lot of reverse engineering just to learn stuff on the go, just to answer questions. And that made a huge difference. It really pushed my learning months in advance. And right after that month, I was like, okay, why like so the finals are in 3 months still, so I still have time. Why not just apply to some jobs? And I applied, I think maybe to two or three companies, and I did one interview and failed it, and I did a second interview and I got a job, and that was in a startup in blockchain industry. I first landed like a 3 month internship, and they're like, yeah, yeah. So we'll see if you can make it. But I was very determined. So once I landed a job, I was like, okay, I'm investing all my money, and I have zero on my bank account. I have no way to go back, and this will
Yeah,
be my motivation.
it's
Again,
a good motivation. Yeah, commit, shut the door behind you, and go burn the bridges.
this is something I would not recommend people because that's like not the safest approach, but that's what I did. And
Hmm.
yeah, later I was promoted to the full-time position, and then later I was promoted into a lead position the same year. And in September 2018, so I developed this new interest or new hobby of participating in hackathons.
Okay, cool.
And on one day in I think it was, yeah, during the summer 2018, I was walking in the park, and I was like, I was mad that like I used to live in a big city, and the air quality, is not great. And I was like, why are we not moving to electric vehicles faster? Like, why are there so many cars with combustion engine? And I looked around, and like there are like no charging stations around. Like, how am I supposed to own an electric car if there is no
Yeah,
place to charge it?
yeah.
So in my head, how I thought about it, I thought, okay, maybe it's a problem with charging stations. So why don't I just learn how to build a charging station and build it myself? And that's how I got to learn IoT and a bit of like uh, hardware.
Hmm.
And after finishing a course on IoT, I was like, how do I apply this knowledge? And I saw a hackathon, and I enrolled there alone with no team, nobody, and just randomly met a person who was also obsessed with a similar idea, but already had a somewhat ideated solution to it, which is allow anyone to manage charging stations. So whether public or private
Hmm.
person, they can share a charging station that they own and make money with it. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like a peer-to-peer Airbnb style model.
Hmm.
And we won the hackathon with it. So we built a prototype, we won the hackathon. Um, all of that happened while I was still full-time employed. And around half a year later, in April 2019, I decided to quit my full-time job and fully focus on what became known as Tao, my first startup in the electric vehicle charging market.
Hmm. Okay. Okay. I mean, the story so far is one of, I suppose, trying as many different things as you can, being very resourceful in your learning. And I think one thing really that I would take from it, and for anybody listening that perhaps is a little bit lost in their career at the moment, that isn't in tech or that isn't in software engineering, perhaps. I always say that there is a job in tech for everybody, but everybody gets scared off because it's technical. Oh, I'm not very good at maths. I'm not very good at science. I'm not very good at this. I'm not very good at that. But I actually think there's a career path, one way or the other, whether you are or you aren't. And I think your story's testament to that, where you kind of identified lots of different facets of the market where you can apply your skills and you know, your operating system internally. I myself am dreadful at maths, really dreadful, but I've found mechanisms and ways to apply myself that it doesn't matter. Um, and I think if I were to give anybody any advice now, um, that is perhaps looking to, I suppose, reinvent themselves, is there's that much content online. There are that many different things where you can apply yourself and learn and meet people who are on that same journey, exactly as you've just said with Tao. You could just find something that just kind of gives you that spark to then go and right, put your energy into and put your time into. So I think, it's quite a in terms of the timing of this story, as we now come into the second month of 2024, there's still a lot of uncertainty. There's still a lot of people that don't know which way to turn. Um, and I think your story of give that a try, put everything into it and learn. Right, take that, put that into this now, take everything I can from that and learn, meet that person. Now try this to eventually get where you are. And how did this all benefit you in Tau? Like bringing all of this together. Like talk to me about the Tau story.
So as we started during the hackathon, we assembled a team of around, I think, 7 people. Out of all of them, nobody really transitioned into the startup except for us two co-founders. And so we had to essentially rehire the whole squad with no money, which is
Yeah.
quite a task. Nonetheless, we still were able to find early supporters who were um, basically working for equity and no salary because we didn't have any money, any funding.
Mm,
Um, and Nonetheless, I went, the first thing I did after quitting my full-time job, I went to Germany to Cologne, and that's where my co-founder um, lived at the time. And we basically spent 1 month together working every single day from a Starbucks, writing a business plan, financial plan, pitch deck, talking to potential customers just on the streets.
hmm
And on the side, I was already studying a protocol for charging stations, which is essentially like a PDF because there are like not many implementations on the market at all, and there are different versions, and most open source implementations were outdated like drastically, and
mm,
so yeah, one of the challenges I had to do is I needed to write the software based on this PDF, which was actually not as bad as I thought initially about it. And while also writing business plan and reaching out to investors, because I was trying to do cold outreach to investors and raise some money for Tao.
yeah.
And out of like 200 cold emails I sent, I only got like less than 10, I think, meetings
Yeah.
scheduled. And that resulted to zero funding opportunities.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we still had no money. We had no product. And yeah, but we had a very strong conviction in our idea. So we managed to build a team of, I think, 5 people by the summer, and
Yeah.
the product started to already take shape. We had designs completed. We started to work on the Android app and on the SaaS platform for managing charging stations. And yeah, like after summer in September, we did our release, the first alpha release of
hmm
our software. We also partnered with a few charging station vendors, including um, some local ones and also Schneider Electric, which is a pretty big European vendor. They also provided us with a hardware, like with a charging station and an electric car emulator, which was very kind of them. And we successfully conducted an integration test between our software and their hardware. And so that's why we were confident in our release. So we launched, but all the excitement was quickly gone because we couldn't gain any traction. Like it was so hard to get people to use our platform because as a peer-to-peer model, it's essentially a chicken and egg kind of problem because, okay, who comes first, charging stations or EV drivers?
Yeah.
Um, and also, how do you convince private residents to share their charging stations? This is like,
Yeah.
quite novel, to say
It
the
still
least.
exists now. That problem, even 3, 4 years later, still exists. Even in the UK. My dad bought a electric car some years ago, way before there was enough infrastructure in the UK to actually
Hmm.
charge that car. Um, and he actually ended up having to hire a caravan in a random caravan site in the middle of nowhere because he was running out of electricity in his car. So he had to stop
Yeah.
at this caravan site just to plug his car in overnight, which cost him like, I don't know, $100 or $110 or whatever.
Oh,
Yeah, just to charge his car. Otherwise, he would have been stuck in the middle of nowhere. So it's a problem that still exists now. While every infrastructure is scrambling to put the actual hardware in enough petrol stations, at enough service stops, at enough roadside kind of cafes. So it is still chicken and egg. I can imagine, in 2019, 2020, 2021, that very early adoption phase, it was a very challenging conversation to have, right?
Yeah, yeah, certainly.
And when
Europe.
did you recognize, like, with that venture with Tao, like, that failure was a possibility? Was there a point where you thought, actually, I really believe in this product and I think it's great, but there's a chance that this might not work?
So my concerns weren't about exactly the idea not working, but rather the team falling apart, and
Mm,
primarily my co-founder. Um, so he relocated to Germany on a like temporary visa to essentially find a job there,
yeah.
um, because otherwise he couldn't stay. And so he had to attend German classes and then he had to find a job. And so once he found it, that was August 2019. And I basically, I was seeing all of that happening. And I was basically after that, I was the only person working full time on the startup. And I was like, okay, how can we like carry this forward? Because like building a startup is hard, but building a startup when people are not working full time is just like extremely difficult.
Mm,
And when my co-founder switched to full time, I had like a very challenging conversation with him because like I asked him plain text like how do you see us proceeding like that? Like I basically went all in. I used all my savings on Tao. Um, and I worked full time, no income for more than a year.
mm.
And that was a really yeah, emotional moment. It's like I felt like this could be the reason why we would fail eventually. Because you need time, you need resources. Um, yeah, and that's where the problems started to accumulate.
Yeah, it's for me, I've done two startups. In my own personal experience, one of the hardest things to get right is people. And nobody cares about your startup more than you. And it's so frustrating when you're fighting and it feels like you're fighting day in, day out, all minutes of every day. And there are sleepless nights, there are very anxious discussions with funders, with the bank, with the tax, the revenue. And then some people just don't get it and they don't turn up, or they don't bring it in the way that you expect them to, and the frustration levels are so high. People are, for me, the what can make or break your business, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So where did you get to, in terms of, you know when you made the decision that, right, these aren't the right people, this isn't going to go forward the way that I want it to because of the people? Or was that in fact the decision you made, or was it something else?
I wouldn't say. mm, Yeah, so just a bit more context. So we wanted to start in Germany because Germany was emerging market in terms of electric vehicles back then in 2019. And it's unlikely that we could have. Okay, there were other options. Okay, there was the UK as well. So the UK
Mm,
could have been a better option for us
yeah.
actually because we just got stuck in German legal process that lasted until the company was ended basically. And yeah, there was a lot of problems with just getting the company registered and things set up. And that's one of the reasons why my co-founder had to stay in Germany and to get a full-time job so that he can get like an address, register a company, things
Hmm.
like that. Whereas in the UK, you can register a company like in one day online, which
Yeah.
is a great benefit. And we should have done that, but we didn't know about this, and I think we were too focused on Germany and making it
Mm,
work
yeah.
instead of considering multiple alternatives. So I think two things that I learned from that is stay open-minded and talk to others, get their feedback.
Okay, but what does that mean, being open-minded? You know, if you were to talk to a room of want to be founders now on their first venture, and you said to them, be open-minded, you know, what does that mean? Because that would confuse them.
Focus on solving the problem and trying different angles to solve it. Don't get overly obsessed on how you solve it. Focus on solving it.
Mm, okay. Um, and what's your exercise now? Yeah, how would you do that? If you were to go and I know you've set up a new startup since, but if you were to do again a new startup and you were to go in and do an open-mindedness exercise, you know, you've got the problem here, right? This is the problem, whatever it might be. I know. How do you then, you know, brainstorm to come up with as many potential solutions for that as you can?
So first, you need to define the problem very clearly to develop deep understanding of it. And then you need to consider multiple alternatives in terms of how to proceed. With those alternatives, you need to describe upsides and downsides of each. And then, I mean, ideally get feedback and then make a decision. That's how I would do it.
Right. Okay. And involve people that are knowledgeable in that particular area as well.
Yes.
When you say to talk to people, you know, you want to obviously talk to people that give you valuable insight and give you the, you know, the benefit of their experience.
I wouldn't strictly limit to those who have experience.
Hmm.
I would say if you cannot have that expertise, any feedback would be useful. Like just a
Hmm.
second pair of eyes to challenge you.
Yep.
Um, of course, you need to be careful when soliciting feedback, but since you are the final person who is making the decision, you just need to get feedback and then decide on which feedback you want to execute.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Okay. So like continue on the journey here. Uh where did you get to where it started to kind of turn? Because obviously you're putting a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of your own personal resources into this venture. You want it to work, of course. It's your reputation. It's everything on the line here. Where did it turn? You know, where did you start to think it probably 2 or 3 or 4 a.m. Typically those hours are the CEO hours. To think, right, okay, I might have some different decisions to make here.
Um, I think it was right after launch. Like, so we launched end of September, and I think around October or November, I felt like something is going wrong. I mean, I saw my bank account declining every month.
Yeah,
Uh,
not a good start.
and yeah, and there were so it's like we launched and there was no traction, no traction, no traction, and there was not enough like human resources to do something about it because so I was the CTO of the company, so I was doing basically backend DevOps, hiring, also fundraising, and I basically worked 14 hours per day every single day without days off, vacations or holidays,
Yeah,
and I think that's essentially what made me blind eventually. So I think in the beginning it wasn't as big of a problem, but as you continue to do it, the fatigue accumulates and you get overly focused on minor issues and you miss the bigger picture and like, you know, right now it's easy for me to comment on things in the hindsight, but it wasn't that clear in the process.
yeah,
And there was always this, we get stuck in the very typical or young founders problem. Like, we will release this feature and we'll start to work. We will release this feature and we'll finally start to work. And we just got stuck in this process, which never ended until the company ended.
right. Okay. So it was. I mean, I use the analogy of in startups. You know, everybody's chasing the ball like a dog. Whatever the outcome is, it's a ball. You know, it can be relative to whatever you're trying to achieve. And I've seen people that are chasing a ball so focused on the ball, they don't see that it's going over the edge of a cliff, and
Yeah.
dog catches the ball, brilliant, bam, over the cliff you go. It sounds like, and like you say, fledgling founders who are learning these mistakes, these are the kind of conversations that we need to have to say, right, this is how to not do that. Get your head above the parapet and somehow look into the organization from the outside, or get somebody in as a mentor, a coach, a non-exec advisor who can come in and say, hit the brakes. This is potentially what the outcome might be if you pursue this path. Um, so using the analogy of the ball going over the cliff, the dog's got the ball, but is now, you know, falling to his death, unfortunately. At what point did you realize, so you've focused so laser focused on these features, these releases, these parts of the product, that it's effectively led you to the ultimate closure of the business? When did you know you'd made that mistake? Where did that hit, that penny? Where did it drop?
I think it was somewhere on the back of my mind because I read a lot of YC articles, watched their YouTube videos, and they talked about it like before I started the company, and then I somehow, forgot about it and was too involved in everything and working nonstop that I just lost the perspective.
Mm,
And I don't think we ever realized it like until it was too late. I think pretty much immediately before we made the decision to shut down Tao, we were certain that yeah, it's like one more feature, it's gonna work,
mm,
but it didn't. And even though at the end we had like some promising perspective in terms of raising funding, we were invited to London to attend to present Tao at Move 2020 conference, where we met a lot of other founders in electric vehicle space and got some feedback. Um, that was March 2020, and 2020 is the year when the pandemic started. So essentially, right after London, um, the world was shut down, and the investor who was interested in investing in Tao, they basically stopped responding to my messages,
yeah.
and there was like basically any hope that was left that peer-to-peer model will work was basically shattered at this point. And that was exactly 1 year later after I quit my full-time job, and I calculated that I have enough savings for just 1 year. So moving forward, the options were few basically. Me finding a job and working on a startup in the minuscule time I have left, going into debt um, without knowing how long the pivot would take,
Hmm.
or shutting down. And we got the whole team together, talked about it, and made the decision to shut down the company because everyone was quite burned out. It was the beginning of the pandemic, and back then there was a lot of uncertainty. People were saying, "Yeah, this thing is gonna last for like 3 years. We don't know how the economy is gonna go."
Yeah.
Um, Investors like stopped investing for some period of time, and yeah, that's basically when we realized that we were chasing the ball off the cliff.
And talk to me about that emotional journey, because there are some scary stats around the mental health of founders and entrepreneurs, 73% of which suffer from mental health illness of some description, whether it's anxiety, whether it's, depression, whether it's insomnia. There is some level of um, mental health, issues going on there. Talk to me about your emotional kind of state throughout this journey of accepting that that was the situation, the period before. What was that roller coaster like?
So I started off strong, and the first time I remember I burned out was in August 2019. And after that, I started to consistently burn out once a month. I even I was joking. I had like a schedule of burning out, and I thought that like I'm exceptional. I can handle that. I can work every day, no problem. But at the end, like when like right before the right before like a few weeks before we made the decision to shut down the company, I was feeling really bad. Like I was waking up with a lot of anxiety because what I did, um, it's basically when you are a CTO of a startup and you do like backend, it also means you're doing on call 24/7, 365.
Yeah.
And every morning I was waking up, first thing I was checking my phone. Like I wasn't going to like brush my teeth or anything. I was checking my phone. And just like, like that feeling, like that short time period between just waking up and just checking my phone, like there was so much anxiety that it almost felt like physical pain
Yeah.
doing that at the end. And when I was talking to my team during those last weeks, I was almost like shaking from anxiety because it was just like it was too much. Like everything that was happening to the startup and to the world with the pandemic was too much for me. And yeah, after we shut down the company, I basically disappeared from all social media and messengers for a few months.
Yeah.
And I basically stopped using any alarms, no notifications, nothing, like complete like blackout, basically,
Yeah.
isolated from the world. And the only person who was able to like penetrate through all of that was my co-founder. He like after shutting down the company, like I think 1 or 2 months into my, let's say, long burnout, he basically noticed that I don't respond to his messages, and he just started calling me, and eventually I responded, and he was like, "Hey man, like don't shut down. If you need to talk, just call me." And I'm very grateful that he did it. Like he has always been a great support, and he's a true leader.
Mm.
And that's basically what showed me how important it is to have someone who you can talk to, because
Yeah. Mm.
that really did help me. And it didn't turn tables or put me immediately on the path to recovery, but I felt like, yeah, I don't have to be like that close from
Yeah.
everyone. And
Yeah.
yeah, having some friends to talk to is very important.
I think it's unfortunately one of the male traits. We don't want to talk. We don't want to be perceived amongst our circle or our friends or whoever it might be as weak or struggling or whatever it might be. And I myself have been guilty of this in the past. Me amongst my circle of friends, I've always been, the go-to person, the strong person, the leader of the pack. Um, because I'm 6'2", 200 pounds. I've always done martial arts. I'm kind of that strong character. And because I was that character, I didn't want to show any weakness, perceived weakness to anybody. Like I'm struggling, I'm actually really struggling, you know, and it cost me my mental health. I got to the point where I had a complete nervous breakdown. I had anxiety, insomnia. It crippled me because I didn't communicate. I didn't open that up to anybody, and I let it completely do this to me day in, day out. And one of the biggest things now that for me and for anybody that's going through whatever they're going through, there's a lot of people going through some stuff at the moment, is to just talk, and find someone that you've got that kind of commonality with, where they understand what you're going through. You don't get a judgmental response. You find someone that, as you did with your co-founder, that understands you, the situation that you're in, and can just ask you like, "Are you okay? Come and talk. Let's just talk." Like I say, man, the stats for the mental health are scary amongst the entrepreneurs community. Um, I think the stat that concerned me the most was, an entrepreneur that's going through some shit is 4 times more likely to commit suicide. 4 times more likely. It's scary, and I think you being able to openly talk about this journey, the I mean, I don't like the word failure. I think it's just something that you've learned immensely from and have now put that into the new chapter of your life and no doubt have implemented some new measures in your life, which you won't chase the ball over a cliff again and you will have the opportunity to talk and it will be you that lead it as opposed to somebody that's knocking on your door saying, come on, Roman, come and talk to me. Where are you? Where are you? What would you say is the biggest lesson that you would give to any founder, whether it's their first, their second, their third, around how to manage what might be in 2024, the end of their runway?
I think no matter what happens, always try to find a way to detach from your venture from time to time. You don't have to be like taking full vacations or full weekends. I understand that sometimes businesses are like basically dying and you usually don't have much choice as a founder, but try your best to really disconnect. And by that I mean no communication. Go and like have, I don't know, spend time with your family. And when you are with them, don't be somewhere in your head thinking about the business or a problem that you have there. Try to fully detach from that moment and be there, be present with the people you are with. That's what I failed to do because even if I was meeting with my family during that time period, I remember vividly how I was just sitting at a restaurant like with my mom and some friends, and I was just staring out the window and thinking about how to solve a minor problem in the code base. Like that's just, yeah, that's just bad. For you?
Yeah, yeah. I have been there myself, and I think it's very difficult to detach from something that has consumed every element of your being. Um, what tactics do you use now to detach yourself?
So I try to be more disciplined. I try to draw a line between work and personal life. I try to take days without social media, for example. I often take Sunday off all social media and I spend a lot of time walking. And I talk to people more. I try to offer help to those who are just need help. Not necessarily struggling with mental health issues, but like anyone, like if they need an advice or just someone to talk to.
Yeah,
And yeah, and just staying connected with people, like surrounding yourself with people, not only having like a work relationship, but just as friends. And just being connected with your family. I think these
mm,
are the things that I prioritize now. And when I have time with my family, I do fully enjoy it, staying fully present and not thinking about work, which
yeah,
takes time. Usually it takes me, I think, 3 days to decompress um,
yeah.
after work when I have vacations, which are usually pretty short, but still.
Yeah, I know that feeling. I think one of the things that I noticed um, is when I surround myself with friends or people who don't talk business, they're not connected to my business in any way, shape, or form. They're just connected to me. They don't talk about business. They just might talk complete shit to me for an hour about something completely nothing to do with my career or the industry. And that kind of gives you that release. So I would say to people, if you've got a network of people that are nothing to do with your business, go and spend some time with them. Go walking with them. If they're going to just spend an hour, have taking the piss out of you and making you feel stupid, like in a good way, then great, go and do it. And for me, like martial arts has been a real big outlet. A lot of people who know me say that they think I'm crazy because I choose to go and get punched and kicked in the face because I love Thai boxing. But I actually went Thai boxing last Wednesday and for an hour where I was sparring with people who were 15 years younger than me, I didn't think about work for 1 second. And I actually was conscious when I came out of the ring and I was drinking my water, I just thought, wow, I haven't thought about work for 1 hour and I've really enjoyed it. And that's where you have to find these outlets. What can you go and do? I call it your yoga. Thai boxing is my yoga, where you're present in the moment and nothing else. And for me, that's a really big way to kind of just detach yourself and reduce your anxiety and have those moments of, oh, okay, you know?
Yeah, it's very important, and you need to find something that really occupies your mind to
Mm,
really detach. It's usually not enough to just have free time from work,
yeah,
because if you go, let's say, for a walk in the park alone, you will probably just continue thinking about work. That's why if you are doing some sport where you need to focus, or you are doing some other activity, maybe playing games,
yeah,
or talking to someone, it occupies your focus and that helps you detach
yeah.
from your daily struggles.
And I think like if you think now, if you were to talk to, the Roman of 2018, 2019, when he was in the thick of it, what advice would you give him? If we finish here on some positivity and like something that people can go away with in their mind, what would you advise the younger version of you?
So, number one thing, I would try to convey a concept called the law of triviality, which is essentially focusing on what's really important, and essentially paying proportionate attention to problems based on the impact they bring. And as a consequence of that, I would expect to have better cadence in how I worked, better balance in my life. Not necessarily perfect, but at least some breaks. And
Mhm.
then during these breaks, use them to fully detach and then come back and do more evaluation of the current state on a higher level and making better strategic long-term decisions instead of just trying to make as many to solve as many small problems every single day and just trying to solve issues by throwing more man hours into them.
Yeah, solid advice. And I think particularly around where you're, I suppose, placing value of your time. For me personally, 2024 um, is a year of really honing in on what actually is important to me in my life. And I've probably over the last 3 years of this, my second startup phase, transitioned slightly from the business has to work, it has to be successful. I've got to build it, I've got to sell it to 2024. Actually, I want to be happy in my personal life. I want my partner, Amy, and I to have the best year that we've had together where I'm present with her on holidays and I'm not anxious and sleeping little and cranky with her because it just makes the relationship unenjoyable for her. So I've completely shifted that now to really focus on not taking my stresses home and really paying attention to the divide, as you say, between this is your work time, you put all you can into your work time, but then you detach and you bring the best version of yourself that you possibly can to your relationships outside of that. And I think you have to be structured to do that. A lot of people, as the younger version of yourself found out, can be so chasing that red ball, nothing else matters. Through walls, over walls, under walls, round walls, over the cliff you go. Whereas now, the version of yourself that sits in front of me today is obviously more present, more focused on what's important to you. So, what is the key thing now that you've put into the business, the new venture that you have, your newest startup, that's giving you that balance?
So basically switching between two modes of operation. One where I am like like a general, like doing the strategic work and planning long term, and two is switching into the mode where I operate, where I execute, um, whether it's writing code, where it's hiring. I just go into the flow state.
Hmm.
I don't think about, long-term strategy or anything like that. It's just me executing for hours, for days. And this separation really helps me make sure that I'm staying on the right trajectory on a macro level while doing my best on a micro level, having confidence that I've already thought about it. I'm confident that this is what I need to do right now.
Yeah, so very present in your work life and your personal. Nice. Okay. And your latest startup, CodeSphere, um, you're just in the process of building seed funding, I understand. So you're going on this journey all over again. And typically I find founders are gluttons for punishment. So they will go to a startup and then go to another startup, but take bits of information forward with you, which is why, to finish on a positive note, I think you shouldn't see the failure, the closure, the running out of runway and the end of that business venture as a failure. It's what have I learned in that process and how now can I implement that into something new and accelerate the success and accelerate personally and professionally into um, you know, a new version of me. Is that how you feel at the moment?
Yeah, I wouldn't change the past. I consider the experience with Tao tremendously important. It made me a better engineer, a better leader, and a better person. And even if the Tao would take off, I'm not sure if I would have improved as a person. I made many, many mistakes, and yeah, I don't think I had like I was building the right culture in the company. Yeah, and that all comes from you as a role model.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it shapes you. It certainly shapes you and makes you solid. There's a saying in martial arts that you don't lose, you learn. You know, a loss on your record is just a lesson on your record, and it's the same, right? In business, in entrepreneurship, don't let the lessons overcook your mind in the middle of the night to fail. What are my friends going to think? What are my family going to think? I've failed. It's unfortunately what plays into that unfortunate statistic that we won't mention again because we want to finish on a positive. Um, so look, it's been great to hear your story, and I think there's a lot of people that perhaps might be going through something similar to what you have been through, who are in it, who don't quite know how to get their head above the parapet. So hopefully they take something from our conversation, and I'm not afraid to reach out to you to talk, to me to talk, to anybody to talk, because
Anytime.
only 13% of entrepreneurs who are suffering from mental health, they go and talk to somebody. So let's see if we can get that stat up between us somehow.
Yes, thank you for talking and raising this topic. Thanks to Daniel who connected us,
Yes.
and yeah, to everyone who is struggling, talk to someone and try not to judge yourself too much. There's a quote that I really like. We suffer more in our imagination than in reality.
Yep. I would. That's a great statement to finish on. So, Roman, thank you so much. And I really appreciate you.
Thanks for having me, Will.
Cheers.